ground is just so saturated. And just beyond that is the Yellowstone River. That is still very small.
Officials are panicking after hundreds of earthquakes hits Yellowstone. Yellowstone National Park, known for its beautiful landscapes and diverse wildlife, has been having a lot more earthquakes lately. Scientists say these earthquakes are actually helping to keep the park's geothermal activity going. Yellowstone is called a supervolcano, and it seems that a powerful force pushed the park's area up so high that it formed a big volcanic crater, also called a caldera. This means that the park is naturally prone to having earthquakes, and the recent increase in earthquakes is worrying officials and scientists. So why are officials and scientists so concerned about recent earthquakes in Yellowstone? The reason is the unusually high number of earthquakes in one part of the park in September, about double the usual amount. Yellowstone often has earthquake swarms, which are a bunch of earthquakes happening in a short time in one area. But this recent increase in earthquakes is unlike anything seen before, and officials are worried it might be a sign of a much bigger earthquake on the way. This is especially troubling because there's a chance that Yellowstone could have a volcanic eruption, and that could be really bad for the nearby area. What does all this mean for the future of Yellowstone National Park? We can't say for sure what will happen, but officials are taking the recent earthquakes seriously. They're keeping a close eye on the situation by using new methods to measure and study earthquakes. They also want to make sure people know what to do if there's a disaster. It's important not to panic, but it's also important to be ready for earthquakes. Yellowstone is famous for its geysers and hot springs, but it also has a lot of earthquakes. Records show that there have been earthquakes there for a long time. Recently, there have been more earthquakes, with over 450 in just a few weeks in 2017. This has made officials and scientists pay even more attention to what's going on. To understand the park's geology and potential dangers, scientists keep a close watch on the earthquakes. They use tools like seismographs, strain meters, and GPS. The University of Utah seismograph stations use a tool called the Rapid Earthquake Information System to quickly and accurately report earthquakes in the area. By looking at past earthquake data, scientists can learn about the park's geology, like how tectonic plates move and the chance of a volcano erupting. By studying past earthquakes, scientists have found out important things about the park's geology and dangers. For example, they learned that the park is on top of a big volcano that erupted many times before, causing big changes to the land and potential dangers. By understanding the patterns and how often earthquakes happen, scientists can better guess what might happen in the future and figure out the risks to the park and nearby areas. Even though the recent increase in earthquakes is worrying, scientists are keeping a close watch and collecting data to better understand the park. Recent earthquakes in Yellowstone have made a lot of people worried, including officials and the general public. But it's crucial to know the science behind these earthquakes to really understand what's going on. Yellowstone is a place where the ground is always moving, and there are usually between 700 and 3,000 earthquakes there every year. Most of them are so small that people can't even feel them. The recent group of earthquakes is probably happening because of the movement of hot volcanic fluids along cracks in the rocks underground. But what's causing earthquakes, and how do scientists figure out how strong they are? Scientists use something called the Richter scale to measure how strong earthquakes are. This scale gives a number to show how much energy the earthquake releases. But it's important to know that earthquakes can happen close together in time. This means that another earthquake could happen right after one, or it might happen much later. This makes it tricky to predict if a big earthquake will happen soon. Even though there's been more earthquake activity in places near Yellowstone, like Idaho and Utah, those earthquakes aren't connected to Yellowstone itself. Even though there have been a lot of earthquakes recently, the chance of a big one happening in Yellowstone is not very high. Dr. Robert Smith says that 5,000 earthquakes happen there every year. It might sound like a lot, but most of them are small, and people don't feel them. Still, it's important to keep an eye on what's happening and gather information to understand the possible dangers and what might happen in the future. By learning about the science of earthquakes, we can be ready and know what to do if there's a threat to our safety and well-being. Yellowstone National Park is famous for its breathtaking beauty, but it's also a place where a lot of earthquakes happen, hundreds each year. Most of these earthquakes are small and people don't feel them, but there's always a chance that a big one could happen. So, what would happen if a major earthquake hit Yellowstone, and what would be the consequences? One of the biggest dangers of a major earthquake in Yellowstone is the harm it could cause to the people visiting or living there. The park attracts millions of visitors every year, and a strong earthquake could lead to serious injuries or even death. The park is also home to many different kinds of animals, and an earthquake might mess up their homes and hurt them. People living in nearby towns could be in danger too, as their houses and buildings might be damaged, causing a lot of problems. A significant earthquake would also have a significant impact on the park itself. The cool geysers and hot springs that everyone loves could stop working or be ruined, and the whole look of the park might be different. There's a risk of landslides and other natural events that could be dangerous for both visitors and people who live nearby. Plus, the money side of things could be a problem too. A major earthquake might hurt the park's tourism, and that's a big part of how the park makes money. Even though the chance of a big earthquake in Yellowstone is not very high, the possible results could be serious. So, it's crucial to know about the risks and be ready to take the right steps to stay safe. With lots of earthquakes happening in Yellowstone, officials are quickly doing things to handle the situation. One of the first things they're doing is keeping a close eye on earthquakes. They use fancy technology, data, and plans to give real-time information to the people in charge. This way, they can make smart choices if something bad happens. They're also trying to guess how the ground might shake after big earthquakes and during the smaller ones that come later. Being proactive like this is super important to get ready for a possible big earthquake and make sure visitors and people living there stay safe. To get ready for a big earthquake, officials are doing a bunch of different things. They practice what to do in earthquakes regularly, make plans for emergencies, and team up with local emergency responders to work together. They're also figuring out what might happen if a big earthquake hits and making plans to lessen the effects. This includes finding out about potential dangers like landslides and rocks falling and coming up with ways to make things less harmful. By doing all these things ahead of time, officials are trying to make sure that if a big earthquake happens, visitors and residents will be safe. But it's not just about the big earthquakes. Officials are also doing stuff to protect people during smaller ones. They're giving information to visitors about how to stay safe during an earthquake, and they're making sure that buildings and other things in the area are built to handle earthquakes. In 1979, they started the National Earthquake Prediction Evaluation Council, NEPEC, to help with this. NEPEC gives advice to officials on how to prepare for and deal with earthquakes. By looking at earthquakes in a detailed way, officials are working hard to make sure that the earthquakes don't cause too much trouble and that everyone in the area stays safe. The recent earthquakes in Yellowstone are making people worried about going to the park, and this is affecting the number of tourists coming in. Yellowstone is famous for its amazing nature and cool geological stuff like geysers. But because there are so many earthquakes, tourists are worried about their safety and if more earthquakes will happen. Because of this, fewer people are visiting the park, and this is hurting local businesses that depend on tourists. Local businesses around Yellowstone are feeling the impact of fewer tourists. They are having a hard time keeping their businesses going. This situation is making officials really worried, and they are trying to figure out how to help local businesses during this tough time. Besides the economic problems, people are also concerned about how the earthquakes might affect the animals in the area, like the bison herd. To deal with these worries, officials are doing a bunch of things to help local businesses and make sure visitors to the park are safe. They're giving regular updates about the earthquakes and what they're doing to manage the situation. They're also teaming up with local businesses to offer support and resources to help them through the economic problems caused by the earthquakes. Even with all these efforts, it looks like the impact on tourism in Yellowstone will last for a while. This shows that ongoing help and attention to this issue are really important. Given the recent increase in earthquakes at Yellowstone, many are curious about what might happen in the next few weeks and months. While it's tough to predict exactly, experts think the earthquakes will probably keep happening at a similar rate for now. It's important to know that most of these earthquakes are small and people don't usually feel them. Right now, the ongoing activity isn't an immediate worry, but officials need to keep watching and paying attention. One big question is how all these earthquakes might affect Yellowstone in the long run. Even though earthquakes can hint at possible volcanic activity, experts think the chance of a major eruption in Yellowstone is still pretty low. Some studies even suggest that the earthquakes might be helping to keep the cool geothermal stuff in the park, like the famous Old Faithful geyser. Still, we need to keep an eye on things and do more research to fully understand what the recent earthquakes mean. Considering the recent earthquakes, it's crucial for people and communities to get ready for possible natural disasters in the park. This means staying informed about what's going on and following advice from officials. It also means having emergency plans and supplies ready, just in case. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has resources and tips for disaster preparedness, and they run the READY campaign. By being proactive and getting ready for possible disasters, we can lessen the harm from events like earthquakes and make sure we and our communities stay safe. So hope you liked the video, share it, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon for more such videos.